Three things I love in life: old places, old books, and old friends. And they're the things I like. Anyway, I'm doing an exhibit because this church is a Protestant church, and Protestant Bibles are more collectible than Catholic Bibles for different reasons. But the most important man for the Bibles was a guy called William Tyndale. Tyndale published three Bibles: 1525, 1526, and 1534. The one that I will bring is the 34. And these Bibles are very, very important because they caused the Reformation in England at the time. Henry wanted an excuse to divorce his wife, who was living with Anne Boleyn. So Anne Boleyn egged him on to read another book called The Obedience of the Christian Man. And the notion was, it wasn't the Bible, was that the king was appointed by God, and hence he didn't need the Pope, that because he was divinely selected by God, he could rule as the king. It was his right to do so. So that gave Henry his excuse, really, to divorce and behead his women. He now then became the head of his own church. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically what it is. And that book was originally written by William Tyndale. After Tyndale published his last Bible, which is the 1534 Bible, 2 years later, he was arrested and then he was killed, hung, drawn and quartered, which is what the normal punishment was for translating the Bible, the Latin Bible, into English. He wasn't the first person to do this. There was a man in the 14th century called John Wycliffe, who published the Bible in English, handwritten manuscript. And of course he met his end. Well, he died at really of old age, but he wasn't put to death. But this is what caused the upheaval in the church, in the split. Henry then became head of the Church of England, his own church. So the Church of England was founded on the morals of Henry VIII, which is not too bad to consider it. You want to get married, you marry. You want a divorce, you behead your wife and you marry again. That's what Henry did. 8 wives, fantastic. So that's what happened. So anyway, I'm doing an exhibit. I'm doing exhibits of rare books. And Mr. Tyndale was a Catholic priest. He trained as a priest, he was a professor. And he had to go to the continent to publish his book in English. So he originally went to the city of Worms in Germany, and Martin Luther had already caused the Reformation by putting his thesis on the doors of a church, of a cathedral, and that set the flame within Europe at the time because of the corruption of the Catholic Church. And Tyndale wanted the Bible in the language. The language of the court of Henry VIII was not English, it was French. There was a dialect spoke in different regions of England, Gaelic, parts of what's called Old English, which is very difficult to understand. And then there was Middle English. And Tyndale brought something else besides the Bible. He gave writers a lyrical English. When he translated the Bible, it was the most wonderful English he used. And he gave the modern English we speak today. It was Tyndale that gave society this language. Every single writer pays homage to Tyndale. I may disagree with Shakespeare, that's another thing with me, but everything that Tyndale wrote, and was copied by all the great writers, Shakespeare or Marlowe or any of the other great writers, Spenser, the great poet, all flowed from Mr. Tyndale. So the radical thing was to publish the book he couldn't publish it in England, but he published it in Amsterdam, and it caused a storm. So the Bible, when it came into England, was confiscated. Henry at the time, you know, he was very Catholic, he was supportive of the Pope, he was defender of the faith, hard to believe. But he ordered all these books to be seized, and almost all the books were destroyed. So only 2 or 3 have survived, or have been found, and that's all there is. So I'm blessed to have one. Amen to that. The divine right of kings came actually in a sense from Tyndale in his interpretation of the Gospels. There was this notion that the king was appointed by God. And of course at that time many people believed this. And this created its own problem, because if the king didn't have someone to succeed him, when his son Edward VI came, he died very quickly, and then we had Bloody Mary, who was Catholic, and she wanted to keep the original Catholic Bible. But the Catholic Bible was actually translated originally from Greek, and it was St. Jerome that actually translated it into the Vulgate Latin. So in actual fact, they had done this themselves a few centuries previously. You could see the upheaval, just the idea that you would change the Word of God, cause civil wars, cause millions of people to be killed and slaughtered. This was the reality of life at the time. So it was very important that who translated it, how it was translated, and who published it. So they needed to control this. This was very, very, very important. Rather than me speaking all the time, and I don't bore anyone to death, you can ask me any questions you like on any subject in this, and I'd gladly answer them. And that way we can back and forth with each other. Otherwise I'm going to die.
What was it that the problem of having it in the vernacular?
Yeah, there wasn't a language in United England at the time. There were many different languages, and the language of actually the royal court, because they owned France, was French. Henry didn't really speak English; he spoke French, because they had most of France. His mother, Catherine, or Margaret of a Jew, was French, and so they didn't speak English, but they needed a language to unite them. So Tyndale translated the Bible, gave them this. He gave them this beautiful lyrical language that we have today. And that was the importance of the Bible. And doing it because he said you didn't need a priest. If you were spiritual, believe in God, you didn't need someone to interpretate. You could go into the church, go to the lantern, turn a leaf and read. The problem is most people couldn't read. But at least he wanted in the language that they would understand. And so that's how the Bible picked up. So once Henry realized this, he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. Then Henry allowed the first publishing of the book, which was in 1538, was the first one that was done in London. Tyndale was long dead, but they used most of his Bible. And then the big shift after that came in 1611, when the King James Bible was put together, which is a big upheaval. And the king ordered a committee to do the Bible. It's 85% was Tyndale's work. So Tyndale was enormously influential. He is to this day. There is no writer, I don't care who it is, in the period after that does not pay homage to the lyrical language that Mr. Tyndale had given England. So he gave them the modern language we use today. So really, if you take the religion out of it, he gave them the modern language of English. Please.
You were talking there about the divine right of kings.
Yes.
In England, they got rid of Charles I, and you heard Cromwell coming on. So that was the end of, let's say, the divine right of kings in England. But in France, it lasted right up to 1798, 1789, when the revolution took place. So it's interesting that there was still one country that followed this idea of the divine right of kings. So the execution of Louis XVI was indeed an incredible event by European standards.
Yeah, it was, but remember that the first book that Tyndale did, the book was The Obedience of the Christian Man, where a set of rules that were set out, and he published that in 1528. He set that vision out in English. So he told Henry, the Pope doesn't mean anything. You are here by the Lord, you're here by God. You're the right to be king. So you don't need to pay homage to the Pope in Rome. And this was news to Henry. He gave him the idea to plunder the churches, take all the money off them, which he did, stole all the books, money and wealth, killed them all off. That's what Henry did. He was ruthless. But once he was given that, Tyndale gave him that. And so it was the 1528 book that allowed him, not the religious book. He went along with the religion because he then became almost like the Pope of the Church of England. And to this day, Elizabeth II is the head of the Church of England.